All right, what is up, everyone? Happy Monday. Hope you're all doing really well. Today, I want to talk about lockpicking and how it relates to getting over obstacles in life. I thought this was really cool because yesterday I was reading this book on lockpicking. It's kind of a hobby that I've started to get into, and I found some really good practical advice in lockpicking and how starting lockpicking as a hobby can lead to understanding these interesting insights in overcoming obstacles. Because really, picking a lock is very similar to overcoming challenges, to overcoming difficulties, and I'm going to explain why. Okay, so the first thing that you got to understand when you're picking a lock, right? There are these pins all set on top on top of the cylinder, and they're locked into that cylinder. And so what happens is when you wiggle the lock, you gently pop this pin up, and it sits on top of this shear casing. So you got to get it over that shear casing. And then it sits on top of it, and you pop the next one, that one sits on it, and then you pop the next one, that one sits on it, and then you pop the next one, and that one sits on it. And then eventually, you can move the lock. So the first thing that you have to pop out is the binding pin. After you pop that pin, you pop the subsequent pins, and it goes in that order, and eventually the whole entire lock comes undone. And I thought I think that's a really great analogy for overcoming a difficulty, a challenge. So you got to find the binding pin. What is that thing that you're trying to do that's going to eventually lead to a domino effect of completing other things? Is it a lack of understanding in a particular subject? Is it your discipline? Is it your motivation? Is it your level of skill? Is it your connections in the area? What is the thing that's stopping you from getting into whatever you're trying to do? That's the binding pin. Okay, so I showed you the example about how you got to get everything sitting up here. Well, once you pop this pin out, how does it sit on top of the casing? The entire time you got to be applying rotational tension to the lock as you're wiggling the key in there. You got to constantly keep on turning, because as you turn it, eventually what's going to happen is that pin's going to be sitting on the top, and you're going to turn it, and then the pin's going to sit on the casing. So the entire time that you're trying to find that binding pin, you got to always apply rotational tension. And I think that that's analogous to being consistent, trying new things all the time. You don't know how you're going to get there. You know what the goal is. You now need to start to try things. And the way that you do that is you stay super consistent. You get a little notebook and you write down what you have to do, and you attack every single day. And I think that that's the key. And if you watch a lot of really successful people, it's kind of like they just do this stuff that no one wants to do. They work out 2 times a day, maybe 3 times a day, but they do it consistently, and they do it for many years, and then they're a superstar athlete. Or if they're really, well-recognized academic, they've just worked really hard in school, and they sacrifice things to stay consistent. And I think that being consistent isn't difficult. It's saying no to things. It's saying no to laziness. It's saying no to taking a break. It's saying no to sleeping in. It's a lot of saying no to things and less of saying yes to things. It's really saying yes to one thing and no to a ton of other things. And I think that when you do that, it's analogous to applying that rotational tension to the lock. So the binding pin is the obstacle, but the rotational tension is the consistency to overcome. And I think that that's a really good analogy for overcoming difficulties. And I mean, I've just found so many really interesting relationships between lockpicking and life, lockpicking and programming, lockpicking and solving problems, lockpicking and hacking, lockpicking. I mean, it's crazy. So I don't know if that's something that you're interested in doing, but I highly recommend just taking some time to kind of look at how locks work. It's a technology that's been around for 6,000 years. Before we had these little tiny metal keys, in ancient Mesopotamia, they used to take these giant wooden logs that had chips in them, and they would put them into a gate hole. And then depending on how the chips lined up, they would knock other wooden sticks in place, and then you could turn it, and you could open up a gate. So it's something that's really old, and I think a lot of our culture has been built around that. And I think it's a really good way to look at things practically, like locks and binding pins. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something. And if you like these little videos of practical advice, I'm always putting a video out Monday through Friday. Thank you for watching.